No one has a reflection when it comes to the elderly people that are in another stage of the life, but also need these cares. Who are the one who care them during these processes? We have already mentioned the person with disabilities. It could be permanent disabilities. It could be temporary disabilities, and sometimes the disabilities are also caused during this migration path, right? During these journeys, they are risking their lives, their well-being. So do you have any other comments or group would you like to mention? Professor, maybe the environmental?
Maybe we can think that we have, in the case of migrant persons, we have one vulnerability in the base, and then we have another kind of vulnerabilities that Laila had mentioned.
Okay, so maybe I would also like to add that some groups, due to a personal identity, for instance, the members of the LGBTI community or some people that belong to certain religions, they also face a differentiated vulnerability. And from the perspective of the states, they have the duty or the reinforced duty to protect these groups. And this implies two things. First, that they have to identify and to think about the vulnerability, so they have to recognize, to be civilized, that these people is vulnerable, but also they have to mitigate the consequences, so to take any active measure to change the situation that has an impact on their human rights. So there are a lot of global instruments that were addressed and developed to protect these specific groups. We would not spend more time on that, but we have selected some news and photos so that we can better illustrate how vulnerability is seen and how can we appreciate it, right? So the very first photo is actually a new. It was a boat almost sinking in the Mediterranean coast. It has something like 400 people in the boat, and the boat was running out of fuel. So in this scenario, the Italian authorities and the Maltese authorities were discussing about which of these would help these migrants. So migration has also a lot to do with cooperation, right? And at the very end, the Italian government has managed the biggest rescue in the recent years. And these incidents also can highlight and call our attention on how migration requires these collective efforts. The second image is both heartbreaking and shocking. It's this sad story of Alan Kurdi, the Syrian 3-year-old child that was killed, drowned in a Turkish beach. And this photo is really sensitive because once it was trending topic and everyone talked about it, right? But now it seems that everyone has forgotten about it. And I think it's interesting that the family, this child, his mom and his 5-year-old brother, they all dead during this journey. And the only one that survived was the father, and his family was calling for this picture not to be forgot, and for this picture to be a reminder on how we are abandoning or being silent on what is happening. Thousands of children continue to die till today, and the world remains silent. So this was a symbol of the pain we had. Would you like to ask anything? Does anyone want to comment on this photo? On those photo and news? I will later share with you this canvas so that you can check the news and the photos and you can have it all. What can you see in this photo? What can you identify? Previously, we talked about children, people fleeing in boats. And in this one, what would you say? What would you guess? No comments. Well, we can see two things, right? In one, we can see a lot of women and children that belongs to an indigenous community that is disproportionately affected by climate change. And this is something that he has mentioned, how these communities or this population are forced to be or displaced within the very same country to another one. And how the existing vulnerabilities that the professor said, the ones that we already have, are coexisting with the new ones that you start to have when you embark yourself in this migratory journey. What happens then? Who would guarantee your food, your care, your access to health, the special needs of the children? And also we have in the other photo people from Venezuela on their way, right? And we can see that another, like a woman is taking care of another elderly woman. So we have this gender discussion also. Mostly women are the caregivers, the primarily caregivers. And would you like to ask something? Maybe the last one. And the last one before we start our working group session. These photos and images were here in Rio Grande do Sul. So as most of you might know, last year we faced dramatic floods that caused a lot of more than 500,000 displacement within our state, but also that submerged our state. It could be maybe illustrative if you think that geographically, almost the size of the UK was submerged. So it's a lot, right? It seems, okay, Brazil is huge, but you think of this, all this area was submerged, and these above average rains caused a lot of displacements, caused a lot of suffering, and make us also think about how these climate change events reconfigures migration and displacement. And also these floods reveal some inequalities. We have, when we began, you mentioned the living conditions. It is really dramatic to think that these floods affected us in an unequal manner. The very first part of the cities that were affected were habited by the poorest people. It has also to do with race, with black people residing in those areas. It has also to do with economic wages. And this has to do with the tools we develop or not to get responsive to this new phenomenon.
And has to do with there is another point, key point there. It's the problem of the cities of the global south and the way in which we had built these cities, well, there is a very, very important problem. And what do you think about that? We are changing because we are talking about a disaster. You know, we are talking about a different type of migration. You know.
Oops, I said a spoiler earlier before then. But you see, I didn't quite realize that this happened to me. I didn't make the connection. I said about Tuvalu, Vanuatu, and I forgot that happened to me last year. The same time last year, last May, that happened here. The city was completely, not completely, but partially underwater. So does anyone have a comment? I didn't see any raised hands. I'm sorry.
I would also add some information that could raise more our awareness about that. The World Bank report is warning everybody that if the climate conditions continue to be as as they are, by 2050, so in 25 years, we would have something like 140 million people displaced due to environmental reasons. And these people would of course be from the global south, from Latin America, but also from Southeast Asia and also from Africa. So we would be facing a huge problem, right? Because we have these environmental discussions and we have these collective actions, but we would also have to face and to respond to this phenomenon, to this migratory flow, and we are somehow impaled or in the debate. So does any one of you want to have any comment and give a word?
In Germany, there was flooding, right? I saw news on that.
Yeah, in Poland too. Last year in September, we had also a flood, and I think it was a topic since like the last 20 years. We knew about it, that the climate change will come if we don't do anything, and so now we also cannot be surprised that we have this problem of migrants that have to leave because of the climate changing, and yeah, as a person that knew it, like believed it since I heard about it, I am not surprised that we have to manage something like this, and I'm surprised that people are surprised that now they're thinking about that we have to manage it, and they don't know how to manage it. Like, we knew it, and yeah, I don't know how to comment it.
Thank you very much for your comment. I think that one thing that is very interesting here with these photos is that the geographical dimension that is behind this situation, because we are talking about a local situation, and before that we were talking about migration as a problem between states, you know, and national states. And then we have these photos that show us that there is another dimension, another geographical dimension of the problem of migration.
So, please.
We had another question here before.
Okay, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was thinking about two problems that come with migration in the context of climate change. The first one being that, as far as I'm aware, climate change, under the definition of a refugee that the UN, I think, set out, and after the Second World War, climate change is not considered a part of being a refugee. And the second one, at least within Europe, I don't know whether that's true in other contexts, this narrative of, oh, there are going to be hundreds of millions of people fleeing because of climate change is used by right-wing parties, but also, honestly, mainstream parties, to kind of foster an anti-migrant rhetoric and kind of translate that into practices of building securitized borders.
I had just a question concerning the notion of local, having a local perspective. I would ask you, local or geopolitical perspective? Because when I see this, and when you highlight that the main targeted peoples come from Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, why? This makes me think that this is not local. This is a geopolitical, historically produced problem.
Well, thank you very much. What I am trying to do is to put in our discussion some categories. One of these categories that is very important in the discussion about displaced people, persons, is the category of internal displacements and international displacements of people. And that shows that internal movement of people exist, and it's very, very important. It's a very important problem. And then, as you said, it's not a problem that concerns only to Brazil or to Argentina or to the countries of Latin America. You can find this kind of situation in the whole global South, and from this point of view, you have reason. It's a geopolitical problem and not a local problem. But what I am trying to do is to say, well, people, we have to use some categories to talk, because it's necessary, to use some categories to think about the problem. And our other colleague, I thank you very much for your comment. It's very, very important. That shows, your comment shows that the law field is it's very important sometimes, and because we distinguish the term refugee, and we don't use the term refugee to talk about these kinds of migrants. In the case of the person that have to move because of an environmental situation, or we use the term displaced people, or persons displaced, but not refugee. That we have to use refugee when we are talking about movement in the obliged by political reasons, not by environmental reason.
Yeah, the definition for the refugee would be actually in the UN 1951 Geneva Convention on the Refugee Status. But there is still this discussion whether the law as a tool from our files, we could protect these environmentally displaced people, and whether we can create any kind of instrument as a tool to address these vulnerabilities, this specific situation, and to ensure that they can have the same access to their human rights. So Professor Gonzallo Sozzo has been working with the International Center for Comparative Environmental Law, which is an international NGO, right, Professor? And they have been working for something like 20 years on a draft of a convention that is addressing this very specific thing we're discussing. So he would also share with us some insights, and then we would have these working groups, which involves also to think, or would invite you to think which tools from your fields you can share. So maybe you can keep that in mind while we hear to him. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will briefly introduce, we haven't got a lot of time, I will briefly introduce this draft convention for the protection of persons displaced for environmental or climate reasons. I think it's important for me to talk 2 minutes or 3 minutes about this project, because I think that shows very clearly how law is trying to advance in relation with the problem of displaced person, vulnerability, and belonging. And well, in the we all know that there is a very important gap in international law today that must be filled urgently with regard to the situation of persons displaced or at risk of displacement for environmental or climate reasons. This is why in 2014 the International Center for of Environmental Comparative Law, an NGO, as you said, composed of environmental law professor with more than 40 years of existence, has taken on the challenge to develop and promote a draft convention on environment and climate displaced persons. And the early version of this draft convention, I think that have two important insights. The convention worked with two key problems. Firstly, how is the protection system for displaced persons or those at risk of displacement organized? And secondly, what can the project contribute to better integration and belonging of these displaced persons? We have to go directly to these points. If they can take a look in the web page of the CDEA of this project. It's not the last version of the draft convention. It's the previous one. But if you take a look to this project of convention, you can find that in relationship with the problems of vulnerabilities, Article 6 says that we will try to organize the protection of this group of displacement persons for environmental reasons with a set of rights. A set of rights that are common to the person that are at the risk of displacement or in the situation of displacement. And it's a very important set of rights. I have to pass very quickly, but the right to protection and humanitarian assistance, the right to safe, dignified, and planned relocation and resettlement, the right to freedom of movement, the right to drinking water, sanitarization, and adequate food, the right to access to basic necessities, the right to access medical care, right to dignified housing, right to choose one resident, and right to recognition of legal personality. In summary, as I mentioned, protection is built through a series of interconnected rights, and this is very important. But because what we are trying to do is to protect people in the situation of this new vulnerability. And what is more important for me is to talk 2 words about the way in which this draft convention contribute to belonging, you know. And well, the only thing I will say is that we worked with the idea of non-discrimination as a principle and as a right, and then to the protection of some cultural rights for people. For instance, the right to education and the access to training, and the right to maintain their own cultural identity. And I think that these 2 problems, law is trying to work these 2 phases of the problem of migration, the problem of the protection of migrant people, and the problem of the belonging. And then well, this is an essay. It's not it's only a draft convention, but we are trying to protect the people in this particular situation, that it's not the situation of the refugees, and to help to build the belonging of these communities to the new place in which they are.
So
We are finishing this presentation, and then
So we would like to also invite you to work in groups now. This whole presentation of Professor Sozzo could be think also as a tool, which is one of the proposed questions, and we have somehow think a bit more about the law responses, since we both come from law, right? But please try to address and to think in these ways to address migration from your field. So from history, you may have your own perspective. You will receive texts that were selected, and two of them are pieces of literature. So one is from Isabel Allende. We have tried to keep it diverse. So please, maybe you can be four. You can also find the questions. We are worried about the time here. Could you identify any vulnerability or vulnerabilities within the text? How would you name it or them? This is something you might identify quickly. And then what possible tools would you propose from your field to address these vulnerabilities? We expect that you can summarize your contributions in 1 or 2 sentences, and you can access in this QR code, in this code, you can access our online shared document, and you can write it directly, right? So we will give you the text. The text is also available in the app. I think some of you might prefer to use it like online, so you have it, or if you want to keep it later. And we also have some printed copies. So please. Do you want to print it? Yeah. But we are eco-friendly, so we don't have for all printed copies. Yeah, but it's later exchange. It's in the OneDrive. Sorry, it's in the OneDrive. The OneDrive, but you also have access, right? Sí, es diferente. Okay. ¿Cómo te desdigas? Es que así, por ejemplo. We need like 6 groups. We can have 6 groups. We have 6 selected.
Do you want help? How do I help?
You can help me, but we need to. You're working with.
Okay, groups of how many?
3 or 4. But this is the same. I think. Who are you working with?
it was terrible. When we arrived to my presentation, we haven't got always like this.
Yes, all events.
The music, 2 groups or just 1?
I am going.
Maybe you could be 2 groups.
I'm going out. So that's why.
And he's not joining you.
And you are from here, from the city.
Not Turkey, the federal one.
Maybe it would be interesting if you could have 2 groups.
I am coming
Because
from
it's like
Argentina.
small groups.
I am from
You can have this also.
from Santa Fe, the National University.
Text going to be handed out. No. It's the entire thing. Oh, I see. Okay. They couldn't read everything right. So it's only this one. Okay.
Profesor, disculpa que te apure en un momento, pero con vi el horario ya me comencé a preocupar. Porque
Aparte,
porque queda media hora.
No, si yo te iba a decir de no decirlo.
No.
Yo te iba a decir no decirlo. Escucha, una cosa que tenemos que decir es, claro, ¿y cuál es el objetivo?
So please note that we will have 20 minutes. They will control it, and we expect that you can summarize it for our collected output in 2 sentences or more. Feel free to write as much as you want. Yeah, you can write it there, please. And each of you would have also a spoken person that could address your conclusions and also talk about your text, right? Feel free. Is in the OneDrive, the text. Ah, do you the app? We can write it for you otherwise.
Lo que hay que decir.
It was the vacation
I think we must say that we are expecting 2 sentences
See,
as a recommendation.
yeah, just say it again. You can say it.
No, pero ya se lo dijiste o no.
Sí, le dijimos que esperamos que pongan 2, pero activa el micrófono y decirle de nuevo.
What kind of sentences, no?
Yeah, maybe aclararle.
As if we are talking with someone that have to take a decision.
La cosa es que al comienzo nadie participaba y tú comenzaron a participar un montón ya podíamos explicarlo.
No, pero mejor acá que participe.
Sí, pero en el momento me
Cumplir con
comenzaron a
el...
mirar ya tipo el tiempo y yo corro de así.
Claro, pero es mejor que cumplir con el orden de la presentación, que ellos vayan intervenir.
Apertar o botão.
No funciona.
Sim, tem que apertar com força.
¿Sí? Ah, tá.
Agora sim.
¿Cómo você tá? Pois é.
Desculpa, o senhor estava falando?
A gente tá um pouco demorado.
See, what we are expecting, I want to say to them that we are expecting 2 sentences or 3 ideas as if they are trying to make some recommendations to someone.
Do you want to intervene? Or
Yes,
if
I
you want
think
me
you
to
can.
do it, I can do it. I've been doing this since morning.
I don't know.
So they're
I don't
used
know
to
if
me.
it is necessary or not.
Yeah, I think you can do it.
And I don't know because maybe they want to be more free to do
As a
in the way as
I think.
as a
as a
recommendation.
recommendation.
Sí.
The workshop is yours, but I'm
Yes,
battling.
Yeah.
If it is to say something, maybe a suggestion.
I think.
Maybe to guide, because otherwise they can be very
Yeah, they
lost.
can be. Yeah, maybe it's good if you can just. I will just keep these questions later.
Yeah, but maybe someone should say something. There are 2 or 3 contributions are being expected.
Yeah, I already said that, but we can.
Ah,
You
you
can
said?
mention. Yeah, you can mention it again, please.
Do you want to say it? I can say it. I'm here for that.
Sorry, we are what the final result that we are expecting of our work there. It's 2 or 3 ideas, 2 or 3 sentences as recommendations of how to treat these kinds of questions and problems that we were talking about before. Okay, but 3 or 4 lines. Thank you.
Banner vai chegar. Pôster, banner de uma aluna que mandou em tempo, mas ele estava desconfigurado. E quando imprimiu ficou desgaçado. Ela vai me dizer quando chegar o pôster. E daí eu saio ali rapidinho. Mas como a Isabelle está aqui...
Que pena que tu chegou tarde, mas tu pode trabalhar, fica em qualquer grupo, Isabelle, fica aí. Tipo, vai participar.
pressão de ajuda de alguma forma?
Não, participa do grupo em qualquer deles.
Tá,
Toma, pega
e a
um
questão,
desses, que
Laila,
aí tu tem todos os textos.
Yo creo que eso está. I think that
do tempo.
and we have to pass.
Sim, é bom. Mas eu só queria perguntar a questão do tempo. São 20 minutos de
Ia ser
discussão.
40, não? Porque a gente começou
E
de que
depois é o quê?
E
Quanto
depois
tempo
eles
de
vão
quê?
partir.
Tá, mas não vai ter pleno de novo?
Vai vai
discutir?
debatendo.
Mas quanto tempo vai durar?
Vai durar 5 minutos, em teoria, por cada um. We are in our last 5 minutes. So 2 minutes. We are on the countdown, the final countdown. Yes. You have to choose your spoken's representative also. So we are on time. How are you doing? How it's going? Okay, you can have 2 minutes then, because we are running out of time. We are so sorry. But then you have these 2 minutes, and then we will discuss briefly.
If we are talking about 3 minutes, it's okay. 3 minutes. Not more than 3 minutes.
So the time is almost ending. We How are you going? No. No tenemos más tiempo. Esta gente está con todas las discusiones, pero no. Ay. No, antes a las 3:20 nos tenemos que ir. Y esta gente que vino para hablar. Estas dos y el... So, guys, we need you to return to our discussions so that we can reach some agreements before the end. Could you write your sentences on the document? No? maybe we can just write them together as we did before, But then you would have like the spoken person and who would present your conclusions, right? So who would like to begin? I would like you to first say which text you were awarded. So some of you had like the text from Isabel Allende, El viento conoce mi nombre. Others had like, sociological text. So maybe you can just say that and your considerations, and then we write the sentence. Who wants to begin? So that it's... I know you want to continue the discussions, but unfortunately, we don't have more time. Okay, we got volunteers. So wait, 1 minute.
So we had a text called Strangers at Our Door, written about migration to Europe in 2015 and the sort of open door policy. And we discussed a few things, one of them being that this text sort of characterizes migration to Europe as a phenomenon beginning in 2015, which we didn't necessarily agree with, and that one of the sort of functions of that is it sort of sidelines the people, the migrants that it is discussing and the actual discussion of them. So there's not any quoting of migrants. There's sort of discussion of these groups that they call remnants. So that's one way of making them vulnerable. Willie used the word objectification. So yeah, not actually censoring the subjects of study, and also presenting migration in 2015 as a new phenomenon. He also writes that 2015, quote, will become, he quotes a director who says, will come to be seen as the year in which the movement of people into and out of the country became finally and indissolubly Europeanized. And we didn't actually know what that means. What is a Europeanized migration? Yeah, that was our discussion.
Okay, so
And yeah, we had our contribution was that
the first one.
yeah, the sidelining of migrants and a discussion about them.
Could you read it?
Yes, so we said that one of the vulnerabilities is the sidelining of migrants in a text that is ostensibly about migrants. And the contribution would be to center both migrants and consider the historical legacies of migration, and so not to sort of make it out to be a uniquely contemporary phenomenon, but rather a longer one.
I have a question. So you have mentioned we also pick some polemic text. We do not necessarily agree with what they are reading on them, but you have mentioned this European perspective. Do you think this text would have any dialogue with the stereotypes?
I mean, the category of European, I think, is already not a total descriptor. Like, it's sort of using itself as a replacement. Like, it talks about a Europeanization of migration, but also Germany has open borders while the UK has closed borders, for example. Very different policies, very different histories with migration. So Europeanization isn't actually, I think, the most useful category. And I think it's sort of a replacement for a more ethnic understanding of migration.
And which vulnerabilities could you identify in this text within your discussions?
The main vulnerability we identified was that migrants themselves were not actually centered as people in the text. So it discusses migrants as quote unquote remnant communities. They're not actually, not interested in migrants, but rather policies affecting migrants and views on migrants themselves, which serves to make them rather voiceless, which is a vulnerability.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. So do you think maybe your title could be Migrant-Centered Discussion when it comes to migration? Person-centered, human-centered, how would you title your contribution? Or you can just think a bit and then we return to that.
Sure.
You can modify it online. Okay. So the next one, please. The next volunteer.
Yeah, we had the text Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. For the vulnerabilities, we identified a few different things. So there's language. So the boys have some exposure to English through like television, but that like clearly they're not fluent in it or anything. They don't seem like they've had a language education. Just their age is one of them. They're off on their own as youth, isolated from adults. We also noticed some like racial segregation is mentioned. So there's like a divide between like white people in Africa and then like them as like black African children. And a few different ways to address these issues. It's like we had this like solution-oriented approach to it. So like funding host families for child refugees, so preferably somebody with familiarity with their language or culture, language education with immersion, integration into the host culture, and also like addressing this issue with like classrooms in that host culture, so it's not just like, so from a young age, people don't see migration as this, migrants as like this separate group isolated from them. I think that's all we had.
So thank you a lot for your comments. Is this your contribution, the second one? Vulnerabilities are the dehumanization. Is this yours? No? Okay, we can construct yours. You have mentioned the ethnic identity as something that is related to vulnerability, and also the family topic, which is really a key point when it comes to migration and to migrant children, as in your case. So how would you summarize this contribution? How would you say or settle this recommendation to address migration? We all know it's so hard. We are trying to, but we really would like to have this output together, so you can think it and discuss it and then add it here. But I will just keep these two ideas in this number 2. Okay. Any comments on that? No. So the next volunteer, courageous one, who is going now? I know you're all tired. I'm sorry that we don't have much time.
Yeah. Okay, so this text was a story about a family, like a mother and a child who was like evacuating from the El Salvador because of like physical danger and trying to find protection in the States. But they were denied by the like official in the States, who said to them that like every criminal, every like migrant is criminal, so like you were not supposed to enter the country. And then like they were eventually like separated, never being able to say goodbye to each other. And I think like two kinds of vulnerabilities are represented in this text. So first, this child, it's so small that he cannot even understand like what is happening around him. But then like he was separated from his mother, and he was like interrogated like from the official as if he were an adult. Like, and then like he was forced to make a decision like if he like voluntarily like wants to like go back to his country or not. So he was kind of like forced by the official to say that he wants to go back to his country, but actually like he's so small that he cannot like make a decision like by himself. So that is a kind like what kind of vulnerability. And also like this mother, she herself is also like suffering from like this like physical danger, like evacuating from her own country and then like seeking protection in the States. But then like she's also at the same time like occupied with the idea that she has to like protect her own child. So, and then like because of like this so it kind of like complified the situation as well. So this kind of two kinds of like vulnerabilities, like mother and child.
Okay, so you have bring some.
I would like to add something.
Please.
I think one thing we agreed upon is if you see the attitude of officials, first of all, the policy is like, try to get rid of them. Doesn't matter how, just try to get rid of them. So to us, it seems like, wow, they are being tortured. If it's food, if it's a physical situation, if it's to separate the mother and the daughter, because the daughter did not disappear just occasionally. The mother was taken into interrogation from a specific official place, and when the mother came back, the daughter was gone. So some official took her. She didn't vanish. And it seems like the lawyer in this text, I didn't understand if he's an official lawyer or is it some volunteering organization. But it seems to me that the efforts, the economic spend of money, if it is official, it's doubling. So on one side, they're trying to get rid of them. On the other side, they're trying to be human. So there's no really policy. That's the way I think. The refugees are like toys. Yes, like everybody's playing with them.
So thank you for sharing with us your thoughts and reflections. So I have written down 2 keywords. You have referred to the treatment they have been given, but also to this possibility of express themselves and to explain what do they need. They are seeking for protection. In this case, the Isabel Allende story is they are actually asylum seekers, right? We have settled that we are all migrants in the big kind, and we have very specific kinds. I would like to ask you, which are the possible tools to address these vulnerabilities? Maybe the other groups can rethink and also add about that point. You have mentioned the legal aid, like this legal assistance. This could be one of the tools, but maybe we can think on other tools from your other fields. We have someone from history also. I think this could be interesting about their narratives, and maybe we can add it to your contributions here. So what would you add like as a tool and your sentence, or maybe have you written the sentence here, or we can write it together?
Or sorry, or maybe you can express this idea in terms of rights. Which is the right behind your idea? You know?
The right of the asylum seekers?
Yes. You know?
Human attitude.
If we want to protect the people in
Yeah.
this kinds of situation,
Yeah.
which will be the right that they have to
get?
Yes.
First of all, I think social aid, linguistic aid, because if they came from El Salvador, I don't know if they understand what people are talking with them. And I'm sure that in the US, everywhere else, it's not very difficult to find Spanish speakers. And policy is also a way of aid, because it is easier when you know in front what you are standing, and not this mixture of everybody is playing with them. And the legal help aid is definitely very important. So I think everything is aid: the social, the human, the basic physical conditions to let them stay in cold boxes for days without food, without anything. It seems like a real torture to me.
So the exercise was also, again, to try to sum up in 2 sentences, 1 or 2, a possible recommendation or suggestions that we can share in how to better understand and treat these migrants that are arriving. So maybe we can think together how we can write down this idea of yours. You have bring this treatment idea, listening idea, and possible tools. You have mentioned the linguistic necessary aid, and also the legal aid.
Legal aid, yes.
Maybe you can write it down.
You should write
And
it. I don't have a telephone.
okay, or we can do it together as you wish. And also and also you guys, the group from the Memoirs of Boy Soldiers. Because we have only 4 groups, you are only one group? Yeah. Okay. We can.
Shall I?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Our paper was about the immigrants, Algerian immigrants in France, talking about their working conditions, and it was like a lot of quotations, and then the paper was basically talking about their conditions. I think we got the assignment wrong. We identified the problems, but we did not come with solutions. As you can see, we identified the vulnerabilities, their dehumanization, exclusion from society, categorization based on status, financial precarity, and lack of social security. These are the vulnerabilities that we were able to identify there. And we also talked about our own professions and how they helped us to identify them. Like linguistics allowed us to analyze through the quotations, with their rhetorical questions and their tone of speaking. You can clearly see that they're being cynical there, like what's going on there, how they are going through in France. And political science, history, and anthropology helped us to identify the issues in law. And we had a good discussion about the natural law, that is natural rights that should be allowed to give into everyone, how they have to perform, these migrants had to perform extra to show that they are worthy of these rights, and also the money itself as well. So yeah, we were able to talk about this, but I think we got the assignment wrong, so we did not really come up with any solutions.
I think it's perfect. We are not trying to find any solutions to something so complex like migration, but we are trying to find this way to approach it and to understand it in a more humane way. So all these ideas that you have bring us somehow are a conclusion of all the things we have been discussing. When we talk about vulnerabilities, we are also talking about dehumanization. But not that vulnerabilities are dehumanization, but due to the vulnerabilities that are not addressed and the consequences are not mitigated, we face this non-human treatment, right? We cannot exercise our human fundamental rights. So I would really like, if you can still, after working so many hours, I don't want to put on your work my words, so maybe you can write it so that we have this final output together and we can keep it as the result of the discussions. So you can have maybe 5 minutes to do that, and then we would have another moment. The next panel, right? Okay, so you can write it down and then we can read it together, and then perfect. Thank you a lot. No, I think it was perfect what you did. I mean, it's okay.
We tried to put like 2-3 sentences.
I think it's okay. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's like a content. Claro. So, are you done? Are you done, guys? Okay, perfect. Then to finish this very first part of the workshop, we are gonna read. We would like you to read maybe your final contribution. Any volunteer, or do you want us to read it, as you prefer? Okay, so as our conclusions, we have that it could be interesting, it could be important to address migration, centering on migrants' voice approach. So we have the sidelining of migrants. The contribution would be centerlining of migrants and consider historical dynamics of migration. We also have the ethic, identity and family challenges as a topic, founding host families for child refugees and resettlement organization, preferably those familiar with child's language and culture. This is really interesting. We have this child accessible and comprehensible, or this easy language, right? Language immersion, making sure they can interact with peers in the host culture. The third one, treatment and listening, provide a set of professional help in legal and linguistic terms. This legal aid and linguistic aid to provide a translator. And the very final one, there is almost okay, perfect. And the final one, which would be linguistics, allow us to analyze the quotations through rhetorical questions and their tone. Political science, history, and anthropology enable us to identify issues in law, social contract, and societal values, and more. So we thank you all for your attention and for your work through the workshop, for the participation, the comments. Professor Gonzallo.
Well, no. The only thing is to say thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for the effort, for the diligence, and for the final results.
Okay, and so now we would. This panel was also designed by Professor Tatiana, who unfortunately couldn't be here, but you can have our contacts in any case you want, or you really want to have any discussion or collaborate or whatever. Now we will move to the very last session with our special guests, and the idea is that you can ask them questions in how can you make this transition between the academia, between I'm done with my master, I'm done with my PhD, and now what I'm doing, right? So now I'm applying for an NGO work, or I want to try something in the in an agency of the UN, or I want to try a professorship. Well, each of these paths has its own challenges and barriers, and the idea is that these three guests can join, share with us their experience. So I will, and you can ask them questions, right? Like practical questions, also related to AI. How can we manage that AI does not replace us at least, or whatever you think. So please, if you have bring any question, you would be invited to read it. And now I will ask them to come. And thank you, Professor Gonzallo, for your time and everything. So we are beginning with our very last session, the alumni session, and we are delighted to welcome Ms. Vanessa Garbini, Ms. Desiree Rodriguez, and Mr. Guillermo Tudium, all of them ex-alumni of our program in German and European Studies. So I will shortly introduce them, and the idea is that they can share with us some advices and that you can ask them questions. So Vanessa Garbini holds a master's degree in law from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul and also an LLM in animal law from the Lewis and Clark College in the USA. She was a visiting fellow at the Animal Law and Policy program at Harvard Law School, where she developed research on social movements and the animal cause. Vanessa is an animalist. She defines herself as an animalist and works for the third sector, actually for the NGO Mercy for Animals, which she has been working recently. And she's also focused on international advocacy and on animal protection and food systems transformation related to climate change. Desiree Rodriguez holds a master's degree in law from the very same institution, the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, and also a degree in international contracts and consumer law from the University of Savoie-Mont-Blanc, France. She is currently a fellow of the Rio Branco Institute, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and she serves as an advisor in the Brazilian Superior Court of Justice. And Guillermo Tudium holds a PhD in strategic studies from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul with training academic international relations and international law. And he was a visiting scholar at the University of Würzburg in Germany during his time as a PhD student. He has over a decade of experience in political advisory, and he has worked closely with diplomats, military personnel, and two former Brazilian senators. So the floor is yours, and we would like to keep in mind that these were some of the proposed questions. What were the main challenges in transitioning from the academic training, your master's or your PhD, to your current field of work? How can we apply the academic background in this digital world? What advice would you offer to all of us or to those still pursuing their graduate studies? Was there any specific experience that this center provided you that has a lasting impact on your formation? In which ways the training in the European and German studies has contributed or continue to contribute to professional and personal development, and what opportunities and networks this center provide you? So I would kindly ask you, and here you can add your own, so please, if you have any, raise your hand. I will so give you the floor, and I will ask you who would like to start. Okay. Okay, ladies, would you like to start?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin thanking CDEA for the opportunity. Actually, I think there is a little bit awkward talking about me in this way, not about a legal topic, but I couldn't say no to this invitation, especially after all the opportunities the center gave me. And also I couldn't say no to Professor Claudia Lima Marques, who was my advisor in law school and also in my master's degree in law. So here I am today. And I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my relation with this center and the German studies. I started my academic journey researching human rights, and I just love it. But in the middle of the law school, as an intern, I started working with corporate law. And I don't know, but it seems a little contradictory, you know, because I was working on, I was studying on a kind of law, but I was doing professionally in a completely different path. And at this time, I had the opportunity to study at the University of Gießen. And there was something there that just made me fall in love for German, because there they were already studying business and human rights. That exactly was my point, because I couldn't, you know, make them fit together. So I lived in Gießen for a while, and I just loved the topic. And when I came back to Brazil, I said, okay, I have to work on it. And I started working on accountability and the responsibility of international corporate enterprises about violation of human rights. And when I applied for CDEA, that was my goal. I really wanted to write a dissertation on the responsibility of international enterprises when they violate some kind of transnational human rights, you know, such as environmental. And then it was the time that the Dieselgate became famous, and it was the time that people were starting to think about how it can think about it in a transboundary way. So when I was in my master's degree in law, I had 3 opportunities to go to German. At first, I went to Heidelberg to study just the German language, but in addition, I got the time to gather all the sources, as many sources as possible for my dissertation. And after that, I was invited to give a lecture at the University of Tübingen about the then recent Brazilian migration law. And at the end of my master's degree in law, I was invited to enjoy the Zenko that happened in Berlin at 2018. And at that time, I won I was awarded as one of the best presentations, and that was very cool because I was afraid because I presented research about the involvement of Volkswagen with the Brazilian military dictatorship. And I was, oh my God, now I am Berlin talking about that. But it was very cool and people loved it. And when I was in master, I was working as a lawyer in a really major law firm in Brazil. And I worked with M&A, private equity, corporate law. And I had the opportunity of managing with a portfolio of clients, international clients, especially European and German clients. And I think my experience in CDEA was very interesting at those times because I already know how to manage with the German culture, European culture, and it make my communication with my clients very easier. But at the end of the master, I decided to leave the private advocacy because I think that all that experience that I had changed my view about law. I became so much more humanist than I used to be, and I felt that public service would fit much more with what I believe in and with my professional profile. So then I decided to change, and I started to study for Brazil's diplomatic career. It's a very, very hard exam. And I think that my experience learning German helped me a lot to be more resilient because it was really hard for me to study German. And even though German is not a language that is in the diplomatic exam, the mental idea, the way I had to think about to learn a new language was the same that I had to use learning Spanish, French, and English. That were some of the language that I had to learn there. And it's okay.
I forgot to mention that we will have like 10 minutes for each of our guests in order to because later we are all attending together the opening session for our conference. So I would maybe ask you in these remaining minutes, how was your transition, or how did your academic formation help you to apply to another positions? How was your process when you earned your master? Maybe if you can give us some advice and share us.
Well, and then I just to finish my line of thought, I changed it again, and I went to work in judiciary, where I am now. And I can apply everything I studied because I still working on private law, but I work with I work on Brazilian Superior Court of Justice, and then we deal with non-constitutional law, like our civil law, procedure law, and I can give this humanist perspective in my job. And more important than just apply it to the relationship between the parties that are in the process I judge, I can have the opportunity to make it broader, because the decisions that are made in the Superior Court of Justice, they must be they must be followed by the other Brazilian courts. So what I decided in one decision must be followed, even not binding, but they must, is highly recommended they follow the decision. So I think that, responding Laila's question, when an enterprise see this background, your interdisciplinary mind, your international experience, it becomes very interesting, because they can see that you are a different kind of professional, because you can think out of the box. And I think there is the most interesting heritage that I have from the center.
Thank you a lot for sharing with us your experience and how was your path. I would also like to reinforce the invitation for you all to raise your hands if you have any questions. But otherwise, if you don't, I will just give the floor to Vanessa, which is our second guest. Please.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all, to meet you all here. So I'm Vanessa. I'm currently working for the third sector. I work for an NGO called Mercy for Animals. It's a nonprofit that works for advancing the welfare and protection of animals exploited for human consumption, right? So those animals that become food. I'm currently the Vice President of Institutional and Government Relations at that NGO in the Brazil office. And I'm gonna tell you a bit about my story. So I started law school same way as Desiree did, wanting so bad to protect minorities, to study human rights, and I knew I was gonna be passionate about international law. And that's why when I first started in the law school, I heard about this research group where they studied vulnerable communities and international law. And I joined this group, this research group, and I found out there was an internship program with the University of Gießen in Germany. And I just applied for it. I barely knew what I was getting into. I was very, very young. And that's the first time I went to Germany. That's when I had to study, I had to learn a law in German. Like, my German happened from attending classes and literally crying during exams. I literally cried because it was so hard and I was so young, but I learned so much from it. So that was already a great opportunity for me. As Desiree mentioned, that program had to do with business and human rights. Desiree was luckily very into both. I was just into human rights. So I made as much as I could to focus everything I could on the human rights aspect of the program. And because of that, I explored all the opportunities that came out of that. I was a visiting student at the Council of Europe in the Roman Travelers Division. Had the chance to meet amazing people, make interviews, wrote an article in German with a lot of help after that experience. And then I got back to Brazil, continued my studies, became even more sure that I wanted to continue pursuing international law and human rights law, kept researching it all the way through the college until the end of the college time, and then I passed in an exam to work for the General Attorney's Office. Is that hurting? Love it. Are you okay? So I started working for the General Attorney's Office in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, and then all of a sudden I stopped working with human rights, and all that dream became like actually a dream that my young self was dreaming about, and that for some reason wasn't possible anymore because I had to work, I had to pay my bills, and working with human rights and international law, we know it's not easy. I know, I mean, I can only speak on behalf of Brazil, but I get the feeling from speaking with other people that's a bit of all over. So you either have to be like very rich to intern for free in Switzerland at the UN and work for free for like 3 years, and then you might have a chance to get a paid part-time role. So I had all that in mind, so I thought, okay, that's not for me. And then I was working, I was a public servant, and I wasn't happy. It had nothing to do with international law nor human rights. Then I applied for the CDEA master program. I decided to come back home, to come back to the academia, to come back to where I used to dream and be so excited about it. So that tells you a little about the role this master program at CDEA have in my life. So I was able to reconnect with all that, to reconnect with human rights protection, international law. Through CDEA, I made what's called summer program in Berlin to study refugee law. I know you guys were discussing migration and refugee, and that's super interesting. So then I got back in touch with that, and at the same time, I also started learning and understanding a bit more about the animal rights movement and animal protection movement. And I understood how that movement could also be encompassed under the umbrella of social causes, because I understood that they have shared roots of oppression, and that I could also explore that, and I could make use of the knowledge I had acquired with human rights and international law and apply that same knowledge for animal protection movement. Then I decided I was going to migrate to the animal protection movement, and I applied through CDEA after I finished my master program, and with the help of the connections I made during the program, I applied for an LLM program in animal law at Lewis and Clark in Oregon, United States. I did the LLM program there. It's the first animal law program in the world, and I was happy to be the first Brazilian to graduate from that program. Then after that, I applied for a fellowship in Harvard, the Animal Law and Policy program. I'm speaking very fast because I'm worried about the time, and I'm sorry. And then, yeah, so by then I had decided that I had been in touch with people that were doing what I thought was impossible. So I would tell you, answering the questions that Laila provided, expose yourself to people, make connections. I know you guys all know what I'm saying, but it's never, it's always good to repeat. Expose yourself. You never know when you're gonna find that connection that is doing exactly what you want. The more you expose yourself to different talks, to different environments, the more you find out about things you might fall in love with that you didn't even know existed. That was me with animal law. We don't, even today, I don't think we have animal law at college. Here in Brazil, it's just getting started. So I had to be exposed to other scenarios to connect that. So to connect what I like, to realize that this is an area that I could explore and that I like. Then after the fellowship in Harvard, I had already made way more connections, and then I started applying for roles in nonprofits. And that wasn't an easy thing to do, to migrate, to transition from the academia to the nonprofit world, especially because I don't know if you guys have had the experience to apply for those roles, maybe UN roles or NGO roles. They tend to value, at least from my experience, way more work experience already in the third sector or agencies than your master's degree or a PhD that we worked so hard for. So it hurt, right? But then you get to know the process, and then you start to understand how your strengths and what you acquired throughout your process of learning and writing articles and studying, and then you get this expertise on how to frame this into what they want to hear from you in the process, right? So I received so many no's. There was a time that I would open my email every day, there was a no from a role I had applied for. Other times I would go a bit further and then would receive another no. But when the moment I figured out how to translate the expertise that I got in the academia into this selection process that usually have many, many phases, there is always a way that you can show that expertise there, right? I'm checking the questions again. How much time do I have?
I would like you to emphasize on, I think you have already mentioned it, but what advice would you offer to all of us while pursuing our studies? Because we are still in the phase of working so hard to get it, right? So what would you?
We were speaking about this a few weeks ago. Expose yourself to people. I'm an introvert. That's hard, I know. Maybe some of you are as well. It's not easy, it's not easy. But then you wear that cape when you're in those environments. So you save energy just for that, and then you go for it, right? You stay in your cave for the whole day, and then you leave for 1 hour just for that, and then you go for it. When you're out there, you go for it. You talk to everyone you think could be potentially interesting to connect with, even though you don't know where that will lead, that connection. Go for it. Connect, networking, and finally and mainly, reflect on your path up to this moment. I don't know neither of you, but I know that each of you has a story and has a struggle. And I'm sure if you were to sit down and reflect on all your footsteps up until now, there's so much you can sell from what you've acquired in terms of expertise and knowledge in a selection process. So get to know the process, understand what they want, train for it, understand your strengths, and connect. Networking. That's how it goes, at least from my experience. That's all I can share with you. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for your time and for sharing with us your experience, Vanessa. I think there are some words that have been repeating in this short running also talk. Desiree has also mentioned the importance of learning a new language and learning new skills. Vanessa has also stressed on that. And I don't remember which of you. I think Vanessa has said, like, when she felt that she didn't know what it was about to do, she returned home. So academia could also always be a home for us, like this safe place. And we would also like to have our last guest that that recently won a professorship in the University of Brasilia. So he's a lecturer there, and so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laila. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. It's especially relevant for me because my story with the CDEA has shaped all my academic training. And I was there in a room like this when the delegation from Germany came to Porto Alegre, they were deciding whether to choose between, Desiree was there too, they were deciding to choose whether Porto Alegre or Rio de Janeiro. For me, easy question, right? What could possibly be in Rio de Janeiro that Porto Alegre doesn't have? So they were very keen on giving the center to the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And I think what we presented there was very significant, because we showed the significance of studying German and European students in the South, where Brazil has hosted many of its European migrants, because migrants are not only just the ones who arrive in Europe, you know. Europeans have migrated throughout the centuries, and I am a son of a migrant, right? And we showcased an example of what we could offer here in terms of excellence, and thankfully they chose us, and now we have this great partnership, which is almost 10 years long, between the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, a public institution, one of the best in Brazil, and the Pontifical Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul, a private university, one of the best in Brazil as well. So my thesis was changed because of CDEA, because we had this delegation from Claudia, and her influence over law at UFRGS is very significant, but we needed more research on German and European studies beyond law. I'm a law graduate, a law major, but I was always a bit uncomfortable with the fact that law nowadays graduates people to operate codex. You know, we are codex operators, and we stop to think about, where did this come from? What are the political, sociological, philosophical origins of this law I'm operating, right? So I was in CDEA was also happened during a period where I was transitioning, you know, personally, professionally, and I ended up at the master's program in political science here at the University of Rio Grande do Sul, the Federal University, and my advisor, Professor Paulo Vicentini, which is a long-lasting collaborator of Professor Claudia, he said, we need people from other areas researching German European studies, because we're going to host Europeans here, we're going to send researchers there, and we need bridges, academical bridges, cultural bridges beyond diplomatic ties, right? So I changed my research, which was focused on international maritime law, and I started researching German foreign policy. And this was very in line with personal aspects. I have family in Germany. I had the intention of doing so. I just didn't have the framework. I didn't have the incentive to do so. I didn't think that a master's project on German foreign policy would be relevant, not until the CDEA showed up, right? So I did my master's degree thesis and my PhD thesis on German foreign policy. One focused on contemporary aspects, and the other one, the PhD thesis on historical aspects surrounding German investment in infrastructure, and how Germany, during the German Confederate States, during the Sovereign, they managed to create infrastructures that are long-lasting, even after 2 world wars, and how that facilitated German development, German economic development, and facilitated also through 3 short, limited wars, the wars of unification, and we analyzed that in the strategic studies program, how war impacts infrastructure, foreign policy, and vice versa. And I try to apply to the Brazilian case, whereas we have a rather new process of regional integration, which is Mercosur, not as advanced as the European Union, but how investment in infrastructure, like the German model from the 19th century and so on, has helped Germany to develop, right? And this was very surprising for me, because my thesis has been has fostered a public policy program at the federal government today. During the period after I finished my PhD, I have the privilege of working with then presidential candidate Simone Tebet. I currently work with public policy in Brasilia, where I also teach. And she was very interested in the infrastructural aspect and the idea of regional integration through infrastructure, right? And I presented my idea. We worked on her presidential program, right? Her foreign policy presidential program, which was headed by Ambassador Gracia Lima. And we created a project which is now one of the chief projects of the Ministry of Planning and Budget at the federal government, which is the Rotas de Integração Sul-Americana, South American Integration Routes. I will send you the portfolio regarding this project, but it's very significant how Brazilian government has looked for the academic world to apply public policies to regional integration process, focused on sustainability, focused on cultural relations with its foreign neighbors, all of which are pillars of the CDEA, right? So basically, CDEA has not just changed my academic trajectory, but also has made it possible for my research to be applied to a public policy, right? So I couldn't be more thankful for the center. I was also a visiting scholar at the University of Würzburg during my PhD, thanks to the center and the DAD. And my final advice, if you are pursuing your master's, your PhD, considering my background, also what Vanessa said, so Kafka was wrong. You can't just stay in a room and wait for life to come get you. It doesn't work. I've tried, okay? You have to go out there. He was wrong on that one. So my advice is that to graduate students is that to remain intellectually open and to embrace interdisciplinary opportunities that may initially seem beyond the scope of your core discipline. Doesn't matter. Let the center take you where it has to take you, and you find your path. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for sharing your personal experience and how our center has had an impact and it continue to have an impact in your life. I think I would really like to give you the very last chance. If you have any question or would you like to have, please go ahead. I cannot go there. Can you?
Let me do this time. Thank you for your interventions, and I cannot see a huge contradiction, and it's wonderful to see a panel with contradiction, with paradoxical motivations. Tell me if you agree or disagree. Such as, for me, the paradox is between the defense of human rights and animal rights and infrastructure. Considering the history of Brazil and of Latin America, infrastructure integration is a dirty word. It's something, it's a synonym of violence, usually to animals, usually to indigenous peoples, to traditional communities who are rarely consulted to make progress take place. So what interests me concerning your experience circulating through spaces of power, how is it when you have this motivation of defending human rights, defending animals,